4:41 local time. Under the eastern approach to the Strait of Hormuz, a U.S. submarine glides almost soundlessly beneath the thermocline. No radio calls, no noise from the surface, only the faint mechanical pulse of a vessel designed to stay hidden. In sonar, the compartment is nearly black, lit only by green displays and the soft red glow of system lights. Headsets on, eyes fixed ahead. Down here, every sound means something. Then one operator goes still. A transient. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quick, unnatural flicker deep in the water off the port side. For a fraction of a second, it could be anything. Cavitation, machinery, a bad return. But it is moving too quickly and shifting bearing too cleanly to match commercial traffic. Possible high-speed contact port side. The voice stays steady, but the mood in the compartment changes at once. The sonar supervisor leans closer. Another trace appears, weaker than the first, then slips back into the layered noise of Hormuz. The Strait is one of the hardest places on Earth to identify underwater threats. Too much traffic, too many reflections, too much shallow water turning every echo into doubt. But this contact feels different. Deliberate? Controlled? Closing? Con, sonar, possible object in the water. The officer of the deck does not hesitate. All ahead flank, right full rudder, deploy countermeasure. The submarine rolls into the turn. Aft, the ship shifts from quiet movement to immediate survival. Valves snap, sailors brace against their stations. The countermeasure drops into the darkness behind them. For one suspended instant, it feels like the boat might break away from the track. Then the hit comes. No cinematic fireball, no dramatic flash, just a savage underwater ooder that slams through the hull and into every rib, every bolt, every person on board. The lights vanish. Emergency power comes back a heartbeat later. Metal groans from one end of the boat to the other. Dust and insulation rain down from overhead. The submarine falls off trim. In control, no one wastes a syllable. Forward compartment reporting damage. Reactor nominal. Angle increasing. The captain is already in the middle of it, voice low and perfectly controlled. Get me buoyancy. Stabilize the bow. I want status on sonar and weapons. But sonar is operating half blind now. One screen is gone, another trembles through static. The contact that mattered most has disappeared into the shock and confusion. Either it struck them and broke apart, or something else is still out there using the noise as cover. 40 nautical miles away, a second U.S. submarine picks up the distant bloom through the water. Not visually, not directly. Just the kind of deep, ugly acoustic thump that has no place in a normal patrol lane. In sonar, several heads lift at once. A secure burst transmission tries to come through, clipped and incomplete, then cuts out. No one says the word for it, not yet. The second boat slows, listens, then slips a little deeper as its flank arrays reach for a cleaner picture. But the Strait gives them only fragments. A container ship overhead, civilian prop wash crossing the layer, the constant murmur of one of the busiest waterways on the planet. And underneath it, something is hunting. Con, sonar, new contact, very low signature, bearing shifting. The captain studies the plot for a second longer than he wants to because there is almost nothing there to study. The contact is faint, disciplined, nearly invisible. Then another weak trace appears on the opposite side. Two bearings, two possibilities. Either the water is lying or someone has turned the middle of Hormuz into a trap. The second submarine shifts left 5 degrees and releases a decoy. The crew waits for the usual pattern, the clean separation between bait and pursuer. It never comes. The returns blur together. Whatever is out there does not go for the loudest sound. It keeps driving toward the submarine. Contact still closing. Now the compartment is silent except for call-outs and the sound of machinery. The captain gives the order. Increase speed, take us down hard. The submarine responds by going deeper, slipping into harsher acoustic water in a last attempt to bend the geometry back in its favor. But the geometry never returns. The contact does not wander. It does not pause. It commits. At 4:48, the second strike lands from aft. This one feels lower, dirtier, more mechanical. The shaft shudders violently. The stern jerks sideways. Men reach for rails as the deck suddenly drops beneath them. Behind the control room, damage alarms begin layering over one another. Propulsion does not fail outright, but it is no longer smooth, no longer dependable. The boat is still alive, but it is no longer the hunter. Above, the sea remains flat and bright in the early light. Nothing on the surface hints at the violence below. No plume, no flames, no dramatic image that could capture what is unfolding in the dark. Only shipping lanes, calm water, and 3 American submarines moving through one of the narrowest choke points on Earth. The third boat receives the emergency fragments minutes later. One burst arrives incomplete, another never finishes. 2 friendly signatures have now disappeared from the undersea picture. In control, the captain looks down at the plot, then back at his team. Nobody needs a speech. Nobody needs the larger context. 2 boats have gone silent in less than 10 minutes. That is enough. He gives the order. Come left, increase speed, launch countermeasure standby. Find them. The submarine begins its turn. Then, in sonar, a new sound pushes up through the clutter ahead. Short, fast, deliberate. A high-speed contact in the water. Closing. The third submarine has only seconds. Inside control, there is no panic, only compression. Orders come faster now, stripped down to the essentials. Rudder, speed. Countermeasure, depth. The boat rolls hard into an evasive turn, stern digging in as the helm answers. Somewhere aft, the decoy ejects and starts broadcasting its false signature into the water. For a moment, it becomes the loudest thing in the sea. It makes no difference. At 5:03 local time, the weapon reaches them from below the hull. The hit is savage. The submarine shudders as if the ocean itself has driven a fist straight through the keel. Consoles blink black. Then red emergency lights snap on across the compartment. Men slam into bulkheads. A panel rips free and crashes to the deck. Somewhere forward, a rupture alarm starts screaming. Somewhere aft, another one answers it. Loss of primary lighting. Emergency power online. Control, aft compartment reports flooding. The captain is already moving to the next problem. Level the boat, I want trim, I want propulsion, sonar, give me anything. But sonar is breaking apart in pieces. One station is dead, another is feeding nothing but static and fractured returns. The contact that mattered most has vanished into the blast pattern. All that remains is damage, confusion, and noise. The third boat is not dropping straight to the bottom, not yet. But it is no longer fighting the way a submarine is meant to fight. Its posture is broken, its stealth is gone, its options are shrinking by the second. That is what destruction really means down here. Not always a dramatic breakup. Not always a visible grave. Sometimes it is more brutal than that. A boat loses the ability to hunt, to hide, to control its own movement, to remain in the fight. In less than 20 minutes, that is what has happened to all 3 American submarines in Hormuz. One likely torn apart by the first strike. One crippled from aft, drifting out of the kill chain as prey instead of platform. And now the third, hit hard and bleeding capability into the water. 3 boats, 3 losses, 1 ambush. Above them, the first American response is already moving. A U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon snaps into a turn over the Gulf, redirected by broken emergency traffic and a tactical picture that is collapsing by the minute. Inside the aircraft, the mood is sharp, focused, procedural. No one has the full story yet. They do not need it. 2 undersea contacts are gone. A third is coming apart in fragmented transmissions. That is enough to start the hunt. At 5:07, the Poseidon reaches the outer edge of the suspected area. From altitude, the sea looks almost offensively calm. Merchant wakes carve pale lines across the strait. Tankers continue on schedule. Civilian traffic moves through one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth as though nothing has changed. But the crew aboard the P-8 begins seeing what surface eyes cannot. A strange patch of disturbed water. An intermittent oil sheen. Bubble traces too concentrated to belong to routine traffic. The tactical coordinator leans over the display. Mark possible submarine datum. Sonobuoys begin dropping in sequence, each one punching into the sea and waking up a small piece of the underwater picture. One buoy hears nothing useful. Another catches merchant screws. A third delivers the first real clue. A faint, disciplined prop signature appears on the scope, weak but unmistakably in motion. Not debris, not background clutter. Something active is leaving the area. Back through the regional command chain, American forces begin stepping into a much higher level of readiness. A destroyer in the Gulf changes course. Another starts widening its distance from civilian traffic to create room to maneuver. Helicopter crews sprint for their aircraft. Weapons are inspected, secured, and readied, but no one rushes to engage. Not yet. The first priority is identification. In Hormuz, a mistaken classification can turn a tactical crisis into something far larger. So the Poseidon keeps building its grid. At 5:12, another buoy catches a transient burst. At 5:13, a second buoy on a crossing line confirms it. Same bearing family, slightly different angle. The aircraft commander studies the geometry. One contact is moving east. Southeast, low speed, low noise, trying to stay buried beneath the clutter of the strait. Then another report arrives from farther north. A second acoustic anomaly, weaker and less stable. Either a separate contact or a damaged platform slipping deeper into the layers. That is the moment the picture shifts from shocking to deeply unsettling. This was not one lucky strike. This was prepared. The American submarines did not drift into random danger. They passed through a piece of water that now looks more and more like a deliberately shaped trap. An undersea ambush built around timing, traffic density, shallow bottom contours, and just enough acoustic confusion to blind even experienced crews at exactly the wrong moment. Inside the Poseidon, no one says it out loud. They just keep working. Buoy 7, recheck bearing. Buoy 9, hold that line. Possible second contact. Confidence low. At 5:17, the P-8 receives the first incomplete emergency burst from the third submarine. The transmission is clipped, broken, and full of dropouts. But one phrase cuts through clearly enough to freeze the compartment for half a second. Object under keel. Then the transmission dies. The tactical coordinator looks back at the display. 3 friendly boats entered this corridor. Now none of them are battle-capable. The Poseidon banks left and tightens the pattern. Below, the sonobuoy field spreads wider like a net. Somewhere inside it, at least one Iranian platform is still moving. Maybe 2, possibly more. And somewhere else beneath that same water, 3 American submarines lie silent, disabled, or worse. At 5:21, one of the newest buoys delivers the cleanest return yet. Short shaft rate, disciplined blade count, a contact turning away from the datum. The acoustic operator does not raise his voice. He does not need to. Possible hostile submarine, bearing steady, he's withdrawing. And for the first time that morning, the mission changes. This is no longer rescue. Now it is a pursuit. At 5:24 local time, the hunt begins. The P-8A Poseidon banks hard over the eastern Strait of Hormuz, its crew now working an active undersea track instead of a search. Behind them, the sonobuoy field expands with every pass, each buoy adding another ear to the water. Ahead, somewhere beneath the shipping lanes and thermal layers, a hostile contact is moving away from the zone that just removed 3 American submarines from the fight. Inside the aircraft, every word is stripped to essentials. Buoy 12 hot. Recheck 12 against 9. Contact still moving east-southeast. The tactical coordinator watches the track sharpen across his display. It remains faint, controlled, disciplined. The contact is doing exactly what a trained undersea platform should do after a successful ambush. Reduce speed, disappear into the clutter, and let the strait itself conceal the exit. But now, the American net is closing faster. At 5:27, the first MH-60R Seahawk lifts off from a U.S. destroyer operating southwest of the datum. Rotor wash tears across the deck as the helicopter clears the ship and races low over the water toward the sonobuoy line. On board, 2 pilots and a sensor operator are already locked into the same problem the Poseidon is fighting. Find a submarine in one of the loudest, most chaotic stretches of ocean on Earth before it vanishes into coastal clutter. The destroyers below do not charge blindly into the box. They know better. Hormuz punishes impatience. In shallow water, with civilian traffic everywhere and almost no room to maneuver, one bad assumption can create a second catastrophe. So they keep disciplined spacing, adjust course in careful increments, and give the aircraft exactly what it needs. Room to operate, cleaner bearings, no interference. At 5:29, Buoy 9 loses the contact. For one ugly second, it feels like the trail is gone. Then Buoy 14 picks it up again, slightly south of the projected track. The operator aboard the P-8 leans closer. He changed depth. That matters. A submarine trying to slip away in these waters cannot simply run fast. Speed creates noise. Noise gives away position. So the contact is using the layers instead, dropping deeper, then sliding laterally beneath the thermocline, trying to break the geometry between the buoy field and the aircraft's sensors. Smart, professional, and now unmistakably hostile. The Seahawk reaches the center of the acoustic box at 5:31 and begins its first dipping sonar cycle. The helicopter settles into a hover as the cable pays out beneath the fuselage, the transducer entering the water like a spear. Inside the cabin, the sensor operator watches the screen fill with returns. Merchant screws, surface reflections, random clutter from the bottom. Then a shape appears, weak but moving. Possible submarine contact bearing 160 relative. The helicopter holds steady. The operator sharpens the picture. For a few seconds, it looks good enough to act on. Then the contact smears and disappears into the bottom contour. Lost him. No one swears. No one slams a console. The crew simply resets and moves to the next dip point. Above them, the P-8 rebuilds the buoy field in real time. New sonobuoys splash into the sea at 5:34, extending the southern edge of the grid. This is what American anti-submarine warfare looks like when the pressure is real. Not one dramatic ping, but hundreds of small decisions, stacking on top of each other, until the ocean has fewer and fewer places left to hide you. At 5:36, one of the new buoys catches a transient unlike the others. A short mechanical spike, a sudden rise in blade rate, then an immediate reduction. The acoustic operator does not need long. He just surged. That tells them something critical. The hostile submarine is no longer slipping away calmly. It is reacting. Which means one of two things. Either it knows the net is closing, or it is trying to reposition for another pass. Neither option can be ignored. The Seahawk shifts again, this time farther south and slightly east, cutting off the most likely escape route toward the Iranian side of the strait. The second dip goes in at 5:39. The cable hums. The aircraft trembles lightly in the hover. The sensor operator filters through the clutter, rejects one false return, then sees it more clearly this time. Longer aspect. Not a buoy, not the bottom, not debris. A submarine. Contact confirmed. Inside the P-8, the tactical coordinator immediately overlays the dipping sonar hit with the buoy bearings. The track sharpens. The contact is hugging a narrow band of water between shipping lanes, using civilian propeller noise as camouflage. That explains why the first boat was hit so quickly. Whoever built this ambush understood the environment down to the meter. At 5:41, the destroyer nearest the box is ordered to hold course and maintain silence. No active sonar blast from the ship, no unnecessary transmission. The aircraft own this engagement now. The Seahawk has the best angle, the cleanest picture, and the fastest response. Inside the helicopter, the operator refines the solution one last time. Range, aspect, speed, everything falls within threshold. The pilot waits for the call. He gets it at 5:43. Weapon authorized. The torpedo drops cleanly into the sea. No dramatic music, no shouted countdown, just a small object disappearing into hostile water, carrying the full weight of what America has lost in the last hour. Inside the Seahawk, the crew listens. At first, nothing. Then the contact turns hard. The acoustic line bends. Blade rate surges. Countermeasure. Now the hostile submarine is fighting for survival, flooding the water with noise, trying to pull the weapon off track. The operator keeps his eyes locked on the display. Weapon still tracking. 5 more seconds. Then the sea answers. A heavy underwater detonation rolls through the dipping sonar. One of the sonobuoys near the southern edge goes silent after the shock wave hits it. Another flares with a burst of debris noise, then settles into stillness. The contact disappears completely. Not faded, not hidden by clutter, simply gone. Inside the P-8, no one celebrates. One hostile submarine has been taken out of the picture, but the tactical situation is still far from clean. Another weak anomaly remains north of the engagement area, too unstable to classify and too close to the original ambush lane to ignore. At 5:47, the acoustic operator on buoy 16 speaks without looking up. Possible second contact, low confidence, bearing northwest. The Seahawk turns at once, dropping its nose toward the next patch of water. The first threat is gone, but something else may still be down there. At 5:47 local time, the echo of the first strike is still rolling through the sea when the next problem begins to surface. Not on radar, not to the eye. In sound. Buoy 16 is feeding a weak, uneven return from the northwestern edge of the original ambush lane. It is not clean enough to confirm, not steady enough to trust, and not random enough to dismiss. In the Strait of Hormuz, that is exactly how danger survives. Small, quiet, and buried under just enough clutter to make hesitation feel reasonable. The Americans do not hesitate. The MH-60R banks low over the water toward the new datum, while the P-8 widens the sonobuoy pattern to close the northwestern gap. Below them, 2 U.S. destroyers continue moving in controlled arcs, never rushing into the center of the box, never crossing each other's acoustic lanes. Every move is deliberate. No one wants to crowd the hunt. No one wants 3 submarine losses to become a surface ship crisis. At 5:50, the second Seahawk launches. Now the geometry changes. 2 helicopters, 1 Poseidon, multiple destroyers, a growing field of sonobuoys. What began as shock is turning into organized pressure. That is how the U.S. Navy starts to regain control. Not through noise, but through layers. Inside the P-8, the tactical coordinator replays the entire ambush sequence against the updated tracks. 3 American submarines were hit in too tight a window for chance. The first hostile submarine they engaged was likely only one part of the mechanism. Something else had to be feeding position, timing, or vector updates into the chain. Then they see it. Not underwater, but along the coast. A surveillance track from earlier ISR passes, overlooked at first in the confusion, now lines up too neatly with the submarine ambush axis. A small cluster of Iranian fast attack craft had been maneuvering well outside direct engagement range, shifting in loose patterns that made little tactical sense on the surface. unless they were never there to attack, unless they were there to observe, relay, and keep American attention fixed in exactly the wrong place while the real damage happened below. The pattern fits too well. At 5:53, the nearest U.S. destroyer picks up intermittent surface search radar energy from the Iranian side of the strait. Not fire control radar, not a direct lock, but active searching, watching. The kind of emission that suggests someone ashore is following the response in real time. That matters. Submarines do not disable 3 boats in a choke point like this on instinct alone. Not with timing this tight, not with geometry this precise. Someone helped shape the box. At 5:55, the first Seahawk settles into another hover and lowers its dipping sonar into the northwestern edge of the grid. The operator scans through the clutter, rejects a false bottom echo, then pauses. There. A contact. Tiny. Almost motionless. Nothing like the first submarine they tracked down. This one is not running. It is lying low, nearly still against the bottom contour, blending itself into terrain and traffic noise. Smart enough to know that speed would expose it. Smart enough to trust the environment more than the engines. Possible submarine contact, minimal movement. The pilot holds the hover. Above them, the P-8 cross-checks with buoy 17, then 19. Buoy 17 hears almost nothing. Buoy 19 catches a faint mechanical pulse. Not current, not geology, machinery. The second Seahawk arrives on station at 5:58 and takes the outer arc, guarding the eastern exit. If the contact breaks hard for shallow water, it will not get a clean escape. If it stays still, the first helicopter controls the engagement. The trap is no longer a line, it is a circle. On the surface, the Iranian fast attack craft begins shifting again. At first, the changes are subtle, then impossible to miss. One turns away from the center line of the strait. Another cuts speed. Their surface search radar emissions become less frequent. Almost at the same time, the coastal emitter that had been sweeping the response picture goes dark for several long seconds. The Americans notice immediately. That tells its own story. Something inside Iran's network has realized the undersea portion of the operation is starting to unravel. At 6:01, the P-8 updates the track solution. The nearly motionless contact below the Seahawk is now the strongest candidate for the last platform involved in the ambush. Maybe the boat that delivered the third strike. Maybe the reserve shooter that never got another chance. Either way, it is still inside the box and it is still a threat. The helicopter crew prepares the weapon. No rush, no theatrics. The sensor operator refines aspect and depth one more time. The tactical coordinator aboard the Poseidon confirms the overlap. The second Seahawk stays wide, watching for any breakout attempt. Below them, the destroyers hold position with the same cold discipline that has defined the American response since the first submarine was hit. At 6:03, the weapon drops. It enters the water cleanly and vanishes beneath the surface. This time, the reaction comes faster. The contact jolts to life. Blade rate spikes. A burst of countermeasure noise splashes across the acoustic picture. The submarine is trying to break off the bottom, climb, turn, and confuse the incoming track all at once. Too late. The operator follows the chase in clipped callouts. Weapon homing, target maneuvering, countermeasure ineffective. Then the sea answers. The detonation is deeper than the first, heavier, compressed by the bottom and the confined water around it. Several buoys register the shock almost at once. One feed drops out entirely, another floods with debris noise. When the acoustic picture settles, the contact is gone. Gone completely. No shaft rate, no machinery pulse, no turn, nothing. Inside the first Seahawk, no one speaks for a full second. Then the sensor operator finally breaks the silence. Contact neutralized. By 6:06, the northwestern anomaly is finished. The first hostile submarine is already off the board, and the emissions supporting the ambush are beginning to thin out across the Iranian side of the strait. Surface craft are drifting wider. Radar energy is fading. The Americans are no longer guessing. They are taking the system apart one layer at a time. But no one relaxes. One lesson has already been paid for in steel and lives that morning. In Hormuz, the most dangerous contact is often the one that looks like nothing at all. At 6:06 local time, the water finally begins to quiet down. Not peaceful, not safe, just quieter than it was when 3 American submarines were still alive inside the Strait of Hormuz. Above the last engagement datum, the first MH-60R holds its orbit for a few more seconds. Sensors still pointed downward, crew still listening for any sign that the contact below survived the hit. Nothing returns. No shaft rate, no machinery pulse, no emergency blow. Only settling debris and the flat acoustic emptiness that follows a confirmed undersea takedown. The second Seahawk remains wide on the eastern arc, guarding the exit lane towards shallower coastal water. Below them, U.S. destroyers continue holding disciplined positions instead of charging blindly into the box. The urge to rush in is there. So is the anger. But anger does not clear the strait. Procedure does. Inside the P-8A Poseidon, the tactical coordinator rebuilds the picture one more time from the beginning. 3 U.S. submarines entered the eastern approaches. 3 were struck and forced out of the fight in less than half an hour. Then the response came. Sonobuoys, helicopters, surface spacing, controlled prosecution. Now 2 hostile submarine contacts are gone. Coastal radar emissions have thinned. Iranian fast attack craft that had been lingering in patterns consistent with surveillance or relay support are peeling away from the center of the strait. The chain that opened the morning is breaking apart piece by piece. At 6:11, buoy 21 reports no movement in the southern lane. At 6:13, buoy 17 remains cold. At 6:14, one last weak anomaly appears near the edge of the original ambush box, hangs there for 5 seconds, then resolves into nothing more than reflected merchant noise. That matters too. In undersea warfare, the moment when the ocean finally stops lying can be the most important moment of all. By 6:16, the Americans are no longer chasing shadows. They are controlling space. The Poseidon shifts from active prosecution to barrier coverage, extending the sonobuoy field east and northeast to make sure nothing else slips back into the traffic lanes. One destroyer edges slightly forward, careful not to break the geometry the aircraft have built. Another holds farther south, acting as a shield between civilian traffic and the remains of the battle area. No celebratory chatter, no victory talk, no dramatic language, just clipped reports, cross-checks, and timestamps. That is what the aftermath of a real naval shock looks like. Not cheering, not speeches, work. At 6:22, the first clear signs of full tactical withdrawal appear on the Iranian side. A surface search radar that had been blinking on and off near the coast goes dark and stays dark. The fast attack craft are no longer holding those ambiguous relay patterns. They are opening distance, not breaking in panic, not racing away, just easing out of the shape of the fight they helped create. That alone says enough. Iran had struck first beneath Hormuz, hard and fast. 3 submarines were lost before the Americans fully understood the box had closed around them. For several brutal minutes, the Eastern Strait belonged to whoever had built that ambush. But not anymore. At 6:27, the destroyer nearest the center line is cleared to move several miles farther in. No opposition, no new underwater contact, no hostile radar shift from shore. The Seahawk crews rotate fuel calculations and remain overhead. The P-8 continues feeding the force a living undersea map. And for the first time since 441, the Americans are no longer reacting to the battle. They are defining it. That is the real turn in the story. Not revenge, control. The 3 submarines are still gone. Nothing changes that. No response can erase the first half hour. But the force in theater does not collapse. It does not pull back into confusion. It does not surrender the lane. Instead, it does exactly what trained naval forces are built to do under sudden loss. Absorb, classify, regroup, and take back the battle space one layer at a time. By 6:34, the shipping corridor is still moving. Tankers hold their headings. Civilian crews on commercial bridges may sense that something serious has happened, but not the scale of it. From above, the strait looks almost normal again. Blue water, white wakes, morning light stretching across one of the busiest maritime choke points on Earth. Under that surface, 3 American submarines lie broken, silent, or sinking in the same confined water where the ambush began. And above them, every American platform still in the fight is now holding the line. At 6:41, the Poseidon crew completes another sweep of the outer buoy field. Nothing. At 6:45, the Seahawk on the eastern arc reports no new movement. At 6:48, the southern destroyer confirms the coastal picture remains subdued. The box no longer belongs to Iran. At 6:52, the first helicopter banks briefly into the rising sun, then turns back across the strait with its sensor turret still pointed at the water below, a stretch of sea that began the morning as a graveyard and ended it as an American-controlled barrier zone. That image says more than any briefing ever could. They were hit hard. They stayed. They hunted. They closed the exits. And by first light, they had forced every hostile contact beneath that water into wreckage, retreat, or silence. No speeches follow, no dramatic declaration comes over the net. Just one final operational update, delivered in the same steady tone the crews have used all morning. Negative additional contacts. Strait remains under watch. That is how this ends. Not with a banner headline, not with triumph. With professionals still on station over a piece of water that cost them dearly and could turn dangerous again without warning. 3 U.S. submarines were lost in Hormuz. Then everything changed. Iran struck first below the surface, but by morning the water no longer belonged to them.